Well, thank you all for coming. My name is Arun, Majumdar, Director of ARPA-E. And I just want to take a moment to introduce some of the people on the stage. This is the leadership team at ARPA-E. Toone, who is the Deputy Director for Technology. Kosinski, the Deputy Director for Operations. And Cheryl Martin, who is the Deputy Director for Technology to Market. So let me just welcome you all. This is the third ARPA-E Summit, and this is the pre-summit technical workshop. And before I start the presentation, let me just say why we are here. ARPA-E's job is to catalyze energy innovation and energy breakthroughs. And those breakthroughs come from you. So we are really here to serve you. And we are here to tell you in full transparency of how we work. You ought to know how we work in ARPA-E. And we want to hear from you. So the purpose of this technical workshop is to really create a dialogue between ARPA-E and the technical and research community who actually do the work. So I really thank you for coming and attending this. So let me tell you what we do in ARPA-E. How does ARPA-E work? And all four of us will be here to explain and answer if a few questions after that. See if this is working. There you go. So just a little bit of history of ARPA-E. Congress asked the national academies to write a report which came to be known as the Rising Above the Gathering Storm Report, which came out in 2006. And at that time, the report proposed the formation of a new agency, which is a DARPA-like agency in the energy sector called ARPA-E. And in 2007, Congress codified it in what is called the America Competes Act, and President Bush signed it into law. And in 2009, ARPA-E got launched by President Obama using the Recovery Act. And in FY11, fiscal year 11, we got our first appropriation budget, and we also got the budget for 2012. And in this roughly 3 years that we have been around, we have now created 11 programs in energy technologies and also an open FOA. We have about 180 projects that are being showcased today and in the summit. And we also invited some people we could not fund. We want them to succeed as well. So what is the mission of ARPA-E? ARPA-E is a mission-oriented agency, and this is there in our statute. To enhance the economic and energy security of the United States, and to ensure the U.S. has the technological lead in developing and deploying advanced energy technologies. And this covers 3 areas: to reduce energy-related emissions, to reduce energy imports, and to improve energy efficiency across the whole economy. And it is done through advanced transformative technologies. So let me explain what an ARPA-E project is through the use of what are called learning curves. If you take any technology, whether it is lithium-ion batteries or an air conditioner, you create a learning curve. On the vertical axis is the ratio of cost to performance. And the horizontal axis, it is scale in size and volume. In the energy business, cost and scale are extremely important. And as you do more and more, you get better at doing things, and the cost comes down and the performance goes up. And today we have learning curves for lithium-ion batteries, for air conditioners, for all kinds of things. And that is today's learning curve. That's the assured path. And it's important to go down the assured path using research in science and engineering. ARPA-E's job is to create entirely new learning curves which have the potential in the future to be disruptive in the best sense of the word. That is, it'll have lower cost or higher performance than today's technologies. And by its very definition, it is risky to start with. But the idea is not to just take risk for the sake of risk, but to take the risk for those technologies that should they be successful, they will have massive commercial impact and make today's technologies obsolete. But because it is risky to start with, at the early stages, we don't know which one's going to win. So we have to create a portfolio of approaches and let them compete. So the ARPA-E creates the competition, and we let the winners, the market pick the winners later on. So that is what ARPA-E does. So let me now transition off to Eric Toone, who's going to explain what we have done and what we're doing.
Thanks very much, Arun. There's many people in this room who are already performers for ARPA-E, and many of you who will be applicants to ARPA-E in the future. And so what I wanted to do was to take just a moment or two to talk about some of the things that we've already done and where we might go in the future, and to try and help you understand what we look for in an ARPA-E project. That first summer, that spring of 2009, President Obama announced our first solicitation, which was a very broad, really unbounded call for applications across the entire energy spectrum. That open solicitation resulted in 3,700 concept papers, pre-proposals, that were reviewed by distance reviewers. After reviewing the comments of that group of reviews, we selected 320 that submitted full applications. Those full applications were reviewed in topical review panels that met here in Washington. And as a result of that, we ultimately funded 37 projects totaling $151 million. This graphic illustrates the range of technologies that were supported through that open solicitation, and you can see that we made investments across the entire energy spectrum. After that initial solicitation, ARPA-E fell into a pattern of identifying specific technology areas and making focused investments in specific programs. Each of these programs is developed and managed by a program director who comes to ARPA-E to serve for a short period of time, typically 3 years. To date, we've funded 11 programs, totaling about $350 million. So the typical ARPA-E program is on the order of 35 to 40 million federal dollars plus cost share. Each program comprises a dozen to 15 individual projects. We've made investments at ARPA-E as small as $500,000. We've made investments as large as $9 million. But the sort of canonical ARPA-E project then is $3 to $4 million, 2 to 3 PIs over a 3-year period. But again, there is a range within that. I think that going forward, ARPA-E will probably continue to explore both funding mechanisms that we've used in the past. The idea of focused technology programs directed by an individual program director, as well as broad solicitations that allow us to take a snapshot of the entire energy innovation spectrum. At the moment, we have a number of both solicitations and requests for information that are on the street, and these help us, in addition to soliciting applications, obviously, get input from the technical community, and we're very much interested in your technical community, about areas that we may decide to move. So at the moment, we have an open solicitation in methane opportunities for vehicular energy. This is storage for natural gas to enable transportation. We also have 3 requests for information on the street. We have an RFI out for a potential open FOA. we have an RFI on the street for a second phase of electrofuels. This is a program that's been running for a couple years now and looking at non-photosynthetic autotrophic organisms for the production of energy-dense fuels. There's an RFI seeking input from the community about the possibility of a second round that would take some of those approaches to scale. We also have a request for information on the street looking for enhanced technologies for robust control of energy storage. So this is a program that's looking really beyond batteries, looking at controls, information systems, things like that. So we're looking really for input from a community beyond the battery community. Many of you here today will encounter program directors and other people from ARPA-E, so I just wanted to let you know that for the open FOA, for the funding opportunity that is currently live for the MOVE solicitation, we are in the quiet period for that program right now, and so we are not able to talk to potential applicants about that program. The requests for information, on the other hand, we're very interested in getting input from the technical community about those potential opportunities, and so we encourage you to engage with the ARPA-E staff while you're here over the next couple of days. So, what makes an ARPA-E project an ARPA-E project? What are we looking for when we take applications and evaluate them? I think there's 4 attributes of an ARPA-E project that we're really looking for. The first one, and by far the most important, is impact. ARPA-E is designed to fund high-risk, high-reward projects that are going to be game changers in the energy space. We're swinging for the fence. We're about home runs. When we look at other funding agencies, I think when money gets tight, there's a tendency for agencies to become very conservative. What you really want to do is you want to see 1,000 little points along the line in the form of preliminary results, and you want to fund those next 3 points, because it's important that things that you fund, the way you deploy your money, work, right? At ARPA-E, when we look at a proposal, the first thing that we ask is not, will this work? The first thing we ask is, if it worked, would it matter? So impact for us is by far the most important attribute. The second is we are looking for technologies that will transform. As Arun pointed out, we're not looking to support technologies that drive existing technologies down their natural learning curves. That's a very important activity. It's just not what we do. So ARPA-E is looking to support technologies that will be transformational in a sense that they'll put technology onto fundamentally new learning curves. The third attribute is we're looking for technologies that bridge fundamental science with practical application. ARPA-E won't fund, for the most part, basic science. Sometimes we'll have to dot I's and cross T's. But what we're really looking for is to build technologies on well-established scientific principles, often recently established scientific principles, often scientific principles that have been drawn from disparate fields, fields that perhaps don't often talk to each other. ARPA-E also won't support late-stage technology development. We don't do demonstration and deployment. So the third attribute that ARPA-E looks for when we evaluate a proposal is that bridge between fundamental scientific principles and technology development. And the final attribute, of course, is team. It's all about people, and at ARPA-E we're very interested in attracting the very best scientists and engineers that America has to the energy space. If we're going to solve the problems that we seek to solve, we're going to need a longer bench and a deeper bench. So we're very interested in attracting people from other fields, as well as the very best who are in the energy space now, to the ARPA-E family. So I mentioned programs that are running at ARPA-E right now. Each of those programs has been developed by a program director, and to tell you how program development works, I welcome Shane Kosinski to the stage.
Thank you, Eric. So now that you heard from Eric and Arun on what an ARPA-E project is, and they talked to you about some examples of ARPA-E projects, I'm going to talk to you about our processes. Basically, how you can become part of the ARPA-E family. When we design our processes, we focus on 3 things. The first one is being open. We're open to outside ideas. We value the technical community's input throughout our processes, whether it's starting a project or a program or selecting projects. We need outside input in everything we do. We also focus on being fast. We move at the pace of business. We understand how frustrating it is to submit a proposal and not hear back for several months. That's not ARPA-E. We move quickly, and we expect our applicants to move quickly in replying to our comments. Last, we're user-friendly. We spend a lot of time developing user-friendly templates, guides, and material so applicants can understand what we're thinking and what we're asking for without the need for a lawyer. Sorry, our lawyer's in here. The slide in front of you talks about the typical ARPA-E program development process. It starts in the envision phase, where a program director in ARPA-E comes up with an idea. In order to come up with the idea, they talk to industry, they talk to the academic community to try to determine where the white space is. Is there an area that ARPA-E can make a difference in, and as Eric talked about, have a transformational impact? Once they come up with the idea, it moves on to the engage stage, where we have focused workshops with the technical community and issue RFIs. As I said before, we value input from the technical community during this phase. Within ARPA-E, all programs that we create require a workshop. However, not all workshops lead to programs. We have had workshops which, at the end of the day, we discovered it was not ready for ARPA-E to start a program yet. Once we start a program, we issue a funding opportunity for the technical community to submit their proposals, and I'll get into that in the next slide. Once we select the projects, we work with the applicants to develop their technical milestones and run their program. And after they're running their program, Cheryl's going to talk about what we do after that, which is technology to market transformation. So this is the ARPA-E funding opportunity process. It's a three-stage process, and it starts with a concept paper. A concept paper is a brief 4 to 5 page summary of a technical idea. We do the concept paper stage because we realize how valuable your time and resources are to develop a full application. A full application typically is 30 to 40 pages and requires a lot of time and effort. What we do with the concept paper, we ask you to submit to us a brief summary of your idea, and we give you feedback. We let you know if we're interested in that idea, if we think it's going to result in being selected. The full application stage, as I said, is a pretty in-depth proposal, 20 to 30 pages, and we do a thorough technical review of all applications we receive. The last stage is the review rebuttal stage, and that's unique to ARPA-E. Once our outside reviewers provide us comments, we give those comments to the applicants so they can see what we have received during the review process. The applicants will have one additional time to respond to these comments and provide us feedback before selection is actually made. Once a project is selected, we do not fund grants. We fund something called the cooperative agreements. We have a substantial interest in the success of our projects. Our program directors are active members of the teams that we fund. We do regular site visits and have quarterly reports which are required for each of our applicants or performers to submit. ARPA-E is not just a check. As I said, we are active members of the team. We help resolve technical issues and help resolve other issues before they become problems. However, if a performer is not meeting their milestone, we will shut off a project and take back the funding. Now I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl Martin to talk about tech to market.
Thank you, Shane. Good morning. I love my job because once all the technology has started to be bubbling up and coalescing into results, we start to think about, well, where does it go next? And to me, that's the exciting thing. It's been the bedstone of my career. We at ARPA-E, we look at your technology success not only on the technology aspects, but also on the deployment and the adoption. There's 3 aspects I want to talk about today: project planning, knowledge building, and relationships and networks. And the second 2 are intimately related to the first one. ARPA-E is unique in our project planning. As all of the prior speakers have said, we actually do cooperative agreements with milestones. Starting with our most recent funding opportunities, we actually work with you to establish technology to market milestones. And we call it that instead of commercialization because it really is about how do you move from where you are today to where you want to be 3 years from now. If you're really early stage, that might simply be intellectual property starting to understand the market that you're in. If you're later stage, it really is, who do I talk to? How's that value chain work? In addition to us requiring milestones, we also actually require that some of the funds that we give you go to that activity. So it's a great pairing of the desire and the funding. And we're continuing to develop and improve those processes. So would welcome your input on those of you who've experienced it or ideas you have about what else we could do to be helpful. One of the things, though, we have been very focused on is how do we do knowledge building? How do we help you with what may or may not be an area that you're particularly familiar with? One of the main things we've been working on lately are market sector analyses. As you know, I mean, energy is very, very disparate. Batteries to control systems to software programming. And who you talk to, how the industry works, do they work in partnerships? Is it highly consolidated? Is there manufacturing here in the U.S.? All of those questions about that, the market itself and the value chain are really important for you to understand. And so for us to be able to give you some information, but also point you to resources that could help you dig in further yourself is part of what we view as a responsibility on our part. We're also all about training sessions. How do we make this easier, right? All of us, when you're trained in technology, you know, finance, talking in front of people, not so comfortable, right? And we don't like being uncomfortable about things. So we would love to have you be more comfortable, just like learning a new language, about the language of business. And again, not to become necessarily the one taking things forward, but to be able to engage in that dialogue. Just so like my really bad French gets me, you know, when I travel around the world. However, we've set up a big part of the program this week to help you with training sessions, and I'll get onto that in a second. The last and most important thing are relationships and networks. Business moves because people know and trust each other, right? The market values your technology. Other people value what you have. And so to be able to understand the relationships and networks you need, you look at what industry you're in, but then you have to meet them. And so the Summit Showcase and this entire 3 days is for you, about establishing the relationships and networks. Success for us is if each of you leave here on Wednesday afternoon saying, I met people who can help me move my dream forward. And that really is important to us. The other ways we do that are in annual meetings of the awardees. We look at who we should bring to the fore in order to engage in dialogue, understand different business models. Also as well, regional resources. DOE through hubs, there's incubators, there's all different things in your local communities, and we're working hard to try to understand and be able to point to resources closer to you, because we can do a lot, but we can do a lot more if we leverage what also is out there. And so that's a quick overview of tech to market, but let me quickly go through how the rest of the day is going to play out and where you can take advantage of some of this. The workshop day, between now and lunch, there are 8 sessions. 6 of those are technology sessions around areas in which we are already running some kind of program. And so the program directors are going to be talking about what is an ARPA-E program in those areas, framing it around what we already do, inviting the dialogue around what else is going on, what white space is there that you think we should be looking at, and really engage in that dialogue. The Emerging Ideas session should be fascinating. Our fellows are actually going to do quick pitch of ideas that they've been vetting inside ARPA-E, and we'd really welcome your input and thoughts about those, should we think about taking those forward, but also other ideas outside of the other areas that we're focused on. Over lunch, a great opportunity for networking, and we recognize that there's a lot of chatter and a lot of talking at lunch, so I wanted to let you know about one special activity we have at lunch. Secretary Chu is going to join us at lunch to present plaques to the winners of America's Next Top Energy Innovator Challenge. The Iowa Powder Atomization Technologies, Umpqua Energy, and Vorbeck Materials will be presented plaques at lunch by the Secretary. And so while I know some of you may not attend lunch, or it's sometimes hard to hear, I wanted to recognize those 3 here and make you all aware of that activity. After lunch, we have what I think is a really, really important session going on. You'll see at each of your lunch settings this government agency network program list. We've got 16 different agencies coming, and they're the people who can actually make decisions about funding for their agency, really to talk about what are they interested in, what are they thinking about. And so I'd strongly encourage you to look at this list and pick out some of those agencies. You'll see as you walk into lunch, it's very well set up, going to be very, very clear, so you can focus what you think you need and be efficient in those conversations. After that, we go into sessions very much focused on technology to market. The first one, for all of us, the scientific method is something that we hold near and dear. How do you use that thinking to get closer to your customers? So that should be a really terrific session. After the break, we have back-to-back sessions. The first one very much on beyond back of the envelope. How do you do your first cost model? How do you think about it? Where do you get your information from? What are some of the pitfalls? Demystifying money. There'll be no money handed out. It's just being clearer as we go through. But the whole language of financing. What do people want when they're looking to give you money? What do they want after they've given it to you? And telling your story. Everyone here has a story. And as you tell that story in a 2-minute elevator pitch, or you tell it in a 10-slide deck, how does it work? How do you put it together? So we've got some great experts coming in. And after that, talking about the rules of engagement. We've got 3 representatives from the grid, corporations, and the defense industry about how and why, some of the parameters of engaging with them. And we think that'll be a really great session following on at the end of the day about engaging with those groups. And then the big event and why we're all here, I think, is really to see what you all are doing out there. There's 240 showcase booths, I believe, and it should be a really terrific event. So that wraps it up for our formal comments. And so we would invite, for the next bit here, anyone who has questions. I'll just field your questions back to the group as appropriate. We have mics in both the right and left aisles. If anyone has any questions for the group. Right hand, Mike.
I'm Mitzi Worth. I'm with the Naval Postgraduate School. This is slightly off topic, but when Steve Chu came on board, he said he wanted to turn the DOE labs into institutions like Bell Labs. There was a terrific article in the New York Times about how Bell Labs operated. And clearly one of the things that needed is long-term thinking. How does that fit into your view about how you want to operate and get others to operate as well?
Well, that's a great question. Since I'm from a national lab originally, let me just explain that there's a tremendous amount of intellectual horsepower in the national labs, and there are scientists and engineers, and there's a tremendous amount of interest in energy out there. And when you're looking at the science and engineering from basic science and translating that science into technologies, we have to think long term. Because in energy technologies, if you're trying to create a technology, it'll take at least 10 to 15 to 20 years to make big commercial impact. And you've got to think long term about that. So I think the labs are also, positioning themselves. They're all looking at the energy space. Secretary Chu is going to various national labs. I'm going there to see how we can translate their intellectual horsepower and their resources, frankly. The tremendous amount of experimental facilities, computational facilities, how we can turn that into solving the energy issues of our nation. So that is going on right now. Well, there are various ways. In fact, Karina Edmonds is going to be here later on, and her job, she is looking at tech transfer of the whole of DOE. And you should definitely reach out to her and talk to her about how the national labs are translating the discoveries and inventions and transitioning the technology to the commercial world.
Thanks, Arun. On the left-hand mic? Yeah.
Thank you. My name's Steve Scuderi, and I'm Vice President and Patent Attorney of a company called the Scuderi Group. We've been developing a technology for the past 10 years with regards to a more efficient engine, which could be used either as an engine or a generator. We have teamed with a very large laboratory in San Antonio, Texas. Actually, it's the Southwest Research Institute. And when I told them that we were actually planning on applying to ARPA-E for additional funding, they immediately came back with some concerns, one of which was the teaming aspect. In their case, we use an awful lot of engineers at Southwest as we team with them, and our team would, in our application, consist of that. But a fair amount of them, some key people, are not located in the United States. They're actually in the UK. And their concern to us was, gee, if we do this, we can't use any of those guys. Is that true?
Questions on teaming?
No, it's certainly not. I mean, we have projects now where we have performers outside of the United States. Obviously, these are taxpayer dollars that are being deployed, and we have to be careful how that they are deployed. But it is absolutely not true that the participation of foreign researchers in some way disqualifies you from ARPA-E funding.
Okay, that's great. One other question, if you don't mind. The cost-sharing aspect. Oh, okay.
Can we take the other mic? Yeah. Thank you.
My name is Ralph Avalo, and I'm president of the National Green Energy Council here based in Washington, D.C. One of the biggest dilemmas that we find as an organization to advocate these new disruptive green technologies is most of the inventors and scientists of these technologies are so protective of the technology itself that they're gun shy in regards to introducing that to anyone. What is ARPA-E doing in regards to the protection after we do the introduction? They're requesting for our organization to put a substantial non-circumvent NDA agreement ahead to investment firms. And in a questionable economic environment where it's hard to get even an audience with investment groups to perform either bridge capital or full capitalization for these companies, they're scoffing at the signing of the NDA. They're saying basically, if you want our money, you're going to have to just introduce it.
It's part of how it works, right? So I think absolutely, I think technologists need to be aware that generally speaking, a lot of investing partners are not going to sign NDAs before they talk to you. They see too much deal flow. And so I think the reality is that becomes really critical how you tell your story. What about what you say can be disclosed without going too far? And honestly, I really think everybody needs to think there's got to be things you can say that don't need an NDA in order to be compelling, because when it is compelling, often then they'll take the next step and will enter into a more secure agreement. So I absolutely think that it's about telling your story and getting comfortable that it's not just about disclosing all your technology in order to be compelling. It's disclosing part of why this thing is going to be important and staying on the comfortable side of disclosure. Whether we provide technology.
You want to repeat the question for everyone? Yeah.
Once the technology becomes potentially a partner with ARPA-E, is ARPA-E part of that team now to provide that protection to the technologies moving forward? Because you do $3 to $5 million investment. Some of these technologies will need $100 million in order to be commercially applicable. Where does that protection come in? Because our organization can provide those new disruptive green technologies, but we need to know to those technologies, when is that protection in place?
Well, the IP that is created from ARPA-E funding belongs to the teams. They own the IP. So they are protected by U.S. patent laws, etc. So we don't own the IP. Okay?
Left-hand mic.
In regards to cost sharing, in our particular case, the team we plan on going with is a small business and a nonprofit. Who handles the responsibility for the cost sharing? Can it be handled entirely by the small business? Does it have to be handled by the small business and the nonprofit? And how much are we talking about?
Cost share is entirely up to the individual teams to figure out who contributes what. So if you team up with a nonprofit, if the small business wants to handle all the cost share or share the responsibilities for cost share, it's up to the team to determine that arrangement. In our funding opportunity, we spell out the cost share requirements And depending on the nature of your team, depends on how much cost share is required. We have a scale of ranging from 5 to 20%.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have time for one more question, so I'll take it from this right-hand mic.
Thank you. My name is Corrine Young, and I represent renewable chemical companies and biopolymers. Thank you for being open, and some of you on the panel have already started a dialogue about enabling an open solicitation this year so that renewable chemical technologies can participate in ARPA. I would suggest that these technologies can be truly disruptive, and they can enable advanced materials that aren't necessarily related to energy manufacturing materials. Some of them are, but they enable disruptive and sustainable manufacturing in the U.S. So much so that it will allow Detroit to shut down ovens, or food can processing companies to also shut down very energy consumptive unit operations. So thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you for your comment.
Because it's a hot sector that's leaving this country because no one federal agency is enabling it to participate because of benign neglect.
Thank you. Okay, now we get into the meat of the program, the meat of the day. At 9:15, this room, as well as 3 just down the hall and around the corner, will be opening up with the technology sessions. So have a wonderful, wonderful 3 days, and thank you for your attention.